Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we talked about the election in Moldova a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about it extensively. And we talked about how it was stolen in plain sight. And now we have confirmation of this outright theft because one of the election observers has given an interview in which she has detailed and confirmed everything that we had been saying. And so I think, we can return to Moldova just, one more time in order to put on the record what this observer observed during her time looking at the election in Moldova. And it was every bit as disgraceful and every bit as dishonest as we discussed. So let's just take a look at this interview that she gave. And it's a publication that I have to say I've never heard of. It's Nachdenkseiten. And so, election observer in Moldova. And it says, Karsten Montag, Miss Firmenich, in your capacity as an MEP, you were on site as an election observer. How did that go? And then she said, well, blah, blah. I was part of a delegation of 7 MEPs from the European Parliament. And we're in the capital, and then it goes on. And then so the MEPs formed 3 small teams. One stayed in Chisinau, one observed in Transnistria, and I was in Gagauzia. And then it says, the Transnistria is part of Moldova, seceded from the rest of the country, where there are polling stations in Transnistria itself. And here it says no, but on the western side of the Dniester River, which forms the border between Transnistria and the rest of the country, then it says, however, the number of polling stations for voters from Transnistria had been significantly reduced from 42 in the last parliamentary election to just 12. And of those 12, 5 were relocated in the last week before the election due to vague security concerns. This means that the options for voters from the Transnistrian region were limited from the start. Again, it's something that we knew, but there is, she saw the
Well,
exact.
and George and I saw the what was claimed to be photographic evidence of bridges being closed,
Right,
roads being blocked, okay,
right,
and personal testimonies. Now, you can take all of those things at face value, but George and I did mention it. It's being reinforced here by this
right.
whistleblower.
That's right. And then she said, similar to last year's presidential election, access to the polling stations was ultimately massively disrupted. I heard reports of police controlling the bridges, turning back voters from Transnistria who hadn't arrived by car. Unlike in previous elections, buses and not even taxis were apparently allowed through. Unlike in previous buses and not even taxis were apparently allowed through. In addition, just as in last year's presidential elections, bomb threats. It's always a good one. The bomb threat. Bomb threats made it almost impossible for voters to cross the bridges. This means that access to the polling stations for voters from Transnistria who are suspected of supporting the opposition more strongly was clearly restricted from the outset.
And just as a sidebar, everyone, keep in mind is that the ruling coalition would have, if you had just taken Moldova itself, would have lost. It
Exactly.
needed other votes, okay?
Exactly. That
And
was
this
the
is
key.
part of the suppression.
Exactly. That was the key that they lost inside Moldova. Um, I read that there were only 2 polling stations in Moscow for Moldovans living abroad in Russia. So Moldovans living in Russia had to travel to Moscow to vote. Is that correct? And so, yes, a great many Moldovans have left the country in recent years. 1/3 of eligible Moldovans live abroad. The election result was massively influenced by votes cast abroad, which ultimately clinched the absolute majority for the ruling PAS.
We need to reiterate, 1/3 of eligible Moldovans live abroad. Keep going,
That's
George.
right. There were approximately 300 polling stations abroad, almost all of which were located in Western countries. Just think about almost 300. In Italy alone, there were more than 70. Germany, 36. At a panel discussion during the preparatory events, I explicitly asked why there were only 2 polling stations in Russia where many Moldovans live. In response, a PAS representative blatantly stated from the podium that there were only 2 because anything else would be dangerous.
Dangerous?
Exactly, that's the question. Well, dangerous for what? I would say that it's dangerous for democracy. You also have to be aware that the maximum number of ballot papers per polling station is 5,000. In Belarus, too, as far as I know, there was only 1 polling station in Minsk. The rest were almost exclusively in Western countries. It's clear that this had a significant impact on the election outcome. You can see that when you look at the election result, Maya Sandu's ruling party received 44% of the votes
44%.
cast in Moldova itself. Of the votes cast abroad, the figure was 78%. See, that already is very suspicious when that happens. So if you want to influence the outcome, you have to ensure that voting opportunities are significantly easier where support is greater. That's exactly what the government has done. And then several media outlets, including Berliner Zeitung and Multipolar, have reported that in the weeks leading up to the election, there were hundreds of raids and arrests of the opposition, as well as disqualification of candidates. Did you hear anything about this when you were there? The raids took place on the weekend before the election. 250
Is
properties.
it? I don't know how she said it, but it sounds very kind of matter of fact. Oh, the rage took place on the weekend before the election. Just, casual. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. But the extraordinary thing is, she's reporting this, and we talked about this, is how little any of this has been covered in the Western media. I mean, this is some obscure outlet. I've never heard of this outlet. She was there, and she's just saying, yeah, this is what happened. 250 properties were reportedly searched, and around 100 people were arrested, which in Germany would equate to about 4,000 arrests. Although
Yeah,
I wasn't there, it was
Moldova is a small country with a
very
small.
small country. Yeah. 4,000 arrests just a weekend before the election. Although I wasn't there, it was confirmed to me during my discussions, and I repeatedly inquired. I was told that people had been arrested on suspicion of receiving financial support and vote buying from Russia. There were also reports that people had been arrested for participating in training camps, to organize protests, and plan a coup. And then the question, were candidates from the pro-European governing party also excluded, or only pro-Russian candidates? I haven't heard that there were any restrictions on the ruling party. On the contrary, there was massive support to ensure the pro-European ruling party's continued power. Before the election, Western heads of government came and went in Chisinau, courting the Moldovan president. And 2 weeks before the election, Maya Sandu was allowed to give a fiery speech in the European Parliament, which was certainly aimed at foreign voters. Those are things you wouldn't normally be allowed to do if you're maintaining a neutral stance. Yeah, there wasn't a great deal of neutrality in.
Well, I mean, but this, reveal the mask comes off. Her constituency are not Moldovans; it's
Right.
Europeans.
That's right. That's right. Um, and uh, and then on election, so you mentioned that you observed the election in Gagauzia. How did elections go on the ground? It says on election day itself, everything went smoothly at the polling stations where we were. There were no serious problems there, nor in the other region. The problem lay in the run up to the election and the lack of election monitoring of votes cast abroad. That was the key. And we talked about this. If there's no monitoring, I mean, yeah, you can have all your OSCE observers in Moldova, but the key was the votes cast abroad, and there was no monitoring there. So we really don't know what happened in
Well,
those
also just
stations
to
in
stress
Italy
the
and
point,
Germany.
no monitoring. What does that mean, everyone? You go to a consulate or a polling station run by the current government in Moldova.
Current government, yeah,
So there are probably some custody issues involved here. I
right,
mean, how do we know that these are valid
right,
ballots,
yeah,
or were they stamped and signed
right.
and wrapped up in advance? We don't know.
No, we don't.
But I
And
mean, if it's being run by the government in power, then
exactly,
you absolutely need observers.
exactly, which means that this whole observation of the election was just ridiculous. I mean, it was a fraud because the election was clearly decided abroad. It wasn't decided in Moldova because in Moldova,
Well, in a way, it was decided in
right,
Moldova,
right,
if you know
she
what I mean.
lost.
Yeah, she lost.
She lost in Moldova. And that's when she looked at the exit polls on the election night and she realized she'd lost. And she was then thinking of canceling the election, which she would have done. I mean, if she had lost. But if there's no monitoring and it's run by the government, then of course they were stuffing the ballots. I mean, because we know everything that they did in Moldova. Of course they were, yeah, you can imagine what they were doing in the polling stations. And you're absolutely right. They were run by the government. It wasn't like, oh, well, they're run by the Italian authorities or anything like that. They were run by the government. The problem is, and everything was done to prevent those voters who were suspected of supporting the opposition from casting their ballots. But this influence was never an issue. The only accusation was always the influence from Russia. This was also conveyed to us at the preparatory meetings, which were almost entirely one sided. At all briefings, the talk was constantly about the disinformation campaigns and vote buying that had taken place in Russia. This is with the OSCE. This is the attitude that the OSCE came in with, that there was all just a preoccupation with Russia.
Look, I can say this from personal experience. When I was in observer of an election in Georgia and multiple elections in Ukraine, the OSCE was there, yes, and they openly talked about supporting Saakashvili, supporting Yushchenko, and
Yep.
people. They were open about it, and you know why? Because I would go up and say in my American English, say, hey, you're here to cover the election. Yeah, we're here too.
Right.
Yeah, I said, how's it going? Well, they pulled this from the embassy. We have to keep an eye that Yushchenko gets reelected. I said, well, aren't you here just to observe? And they said, yeah, that's how we observe. And they were all this kind of these, you know, overweight, happy-go-lucky Americans that work in embassies through Europe. I mean, I'm
Right.
sure they're very nice people, but they didn't take it seriously whatsoever. They wanted and in Georgia it was even worse. I mean,
Right.
I overheard conversation. Well, Putin is next. We have to go after Putin. Okay. They're just openly talking about it. These are
Right.
election observers.
That's right. That's right. And though she doesn't mention it in the interview, um, election observers were banned from coming to Moldova. The Russians were banned from coming, which is very, very strange because
You're a member of the OSCE. It still exists.
exactly one of the founding members of the OSCE. So they were banned. That is quite a remarkable thing. These are just observers. You say you're banning observers from attending. And I think there were other observers that they banned. Anyone who I think that the government thought that they were not entirely in their pocket, that they weren't going to be sympathetic, they were just banned from coming. And then if you want to
Well,
conduct
there's
serious,
there's still no evidence has surfaced, and please, it has, please point it out to us. where did who is giving out all this money? What Russians were doing this? I
Yeah.
mean, you just say it, but is there any evidence? I mean, did you catch it on film? Do you have people that are making testimonies about it? I mean, it just assumed. It's never
Yeah.
seriously dealt with as an accusation.
It's very, very interesting because the whole story of Russian interference, going all the way back to the 2016 election in the United States, it's entirely kind of metaphysical. It's all kind of this. It's somewhere in the ether, this Russian interference, but no one actually has to come up with any manifestation. Okay, well, show us, a Russian who was doing something that was could be involved as interference, bribing somebody or doing something like that. There's never anything like that. It's just taken for granted. The moment you say Russian interference, then everybody falls into line. Oh my God, Russian interference. But exactly, there's never anyone around. And that's why, if you recall, in the United States, they finally grabbed that woman, Maria Butina. We've got it. We've got a Russian. And it turns out that she had nothing whatever to do with the 2016 election, but they needed a Russian that they can arrest and put on trial and dump in prison. Oh, look, we have a Russian in our custody. Nothing to do whatsoever with the election.
Yeah, this might be a bit hyperbolic, but I think there was only one Russian involved in Russiagate.
Yes, that's right. Um, and so, if you want to conduct serious election observation, you can't emerge from an election like this one in Moldova and call it a victory for democracy. Kind of understated. You can't base your assessment of an election solely on whether the ballot boxes were sealed at the polling stations on election day. That's important, no question about it, but you also have to assess the extent to which eligible voters even had access to the polling station. Yeah, that's part of a fair and free election. And then my criticism is that election observation was also used to confer on these elections the sanctity of a truly democratic election. That's the function of these OSCE observers, that they come along and then immediately, within hours of the election, they say, yep, free and fair, everything was very smooth, perfectly right. We give it, a clean bill of health. And for example, many voters were unable to participate in the election at all. And then, what was the final statement of the Election Observation Commission? And then she says it was presented that everything had ultimately been a great success, and that
Ultimately, ultimately,
that's right,
it
and
all
that
in the end, it all added up in the right direction.
exactly, exactly, and then of course, um, all of the usual suspects, the Macron and Merz and Ursula and all the rest of them. But great victory for democracy. Fantastic day for Moldovans. Moldovans have chosen the path of democracy and Europe. They've
Except
turned
for
their back on Russia.
one third of them didn't participate.
Exactly. And that all the most important requirements had been met. It was also consistently emphasized that despite the threat posed by Russia to disrupt and influence the election, a fair and democratic election had been held. After this presentation, there was not a single question from the journalists present.
Yeah, but even if you can go through the pages of the mainstream media, Politico, George and I already talked about this. There were very, very serious concerns that Sandu wasn't going to pull it over the
That's right.
line.
Yeah.
But no journalists knew that, I guess.
That's
That's really,
yes.
I mean, a simple question is going into the election, your party and your allies were doing very poorly by multiple
Right.
polling agencies and reported in
Right.
Western media.
Right.
So how do you explain the result?
Right.
Nobody, that's,
Right. Right. Yes. But it does raise very interesting question. I mean, where do we go now as far as elections in Europe are concerned. I mean, it's essentially now these elections becoming more and more pointless because it's like the outcomes are
Yes.
predetermined. So you know, that
What is going to happen in the UK if Reform wins in the next by-election or something? What are they going to do? What are they going to do?
right,
AfD, what happens if they have an election victory? What are they
right,
going to do?
right. No, that's right. I think we know in Germany that absolutely Germany they're just going to ban the party. I mean, I think it's just no ands, ifs, and buts about that. I mean, that's where it's obviously where it's heading.
Yeah, as I think we had it was a while back. So if you don't ban AfD, we'll have 1933.
Exactly.
If you don't allow, but if they're allowed, we'll have 1933. You can't win with these
That's right.
people.
That's right. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's what they always do. It's the reductio ad Hitlerum. I mean, so everything is Hitler, and so everything is justifiable because Hitler, and that's it. End of argument. It's like the in different contexts with the Israel. It's anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And well, it's anti-Semitism. So that and since anti-Semitism is the greatest evil mankind has known, then we're justified in doing whatever is necessary to fight anti-Semitism. Um, he says there was not a single question from the journalist present. I found that strange. I didn't find it strange. I we've covered a number of times here in the gaggle the news conferences at NATO. Not once is there ever a question calls into question anything that NATO does. It's
Well,
always
particularly if the first question goes to CNN, or the first
exactly.
question goes
Yeah,
to BBC.
that's
Okay,
right. The only time there's any kind of questioning is why aren't you doing more
more.
to
Yeah,
thwart Russia? Have
yeah.
you done enough? Given Putin's ambitions, have you done enough to stop Putin? That's all. And that's all they call on. They may, who knows who's in the audience, and there may well be people putting their hand up and wanting to ask, which they know would be a seriously challenging question, but they don't do that. The one time that happened, you remember I think it was a Russian who was there and asked about, it was about Yugoslavia,
Oh
and
yeah, but well,
yeah.
Stoltenberg said it was a success.
It was, but he also said, "Oh, well, that was legal. That was
No, it
mandated by
wasn't
the United
legal.
Nations." Exactly, it wasn't. But Stoltenberg said that, and I think it had to be some Western journalist kind of sheepishly said, "Well, I'm not sure." Very polite. I'm not sure it was exactly legal. But my memory is a little hazy now. But I'm not sure that the UN signed off on it. But that Stoltenberg said, "Well, it doesn't really matter." So, but you see that never just ask a question, allow someone to ask a question. You're going to make sure you know exactly whom you're going to allow to speak. But this reflected what had already been seen in the preparatory meetings. There were many people at the site, not just the 7 members of the European Parliament, but also a large delegation from the OSCE and Council of Europe. But in fact, the criticism was reduced to the fact that there were only a few complaints on election day. A few complaints. Um, However, I expect election observation to be able to express criticism where it is due, and then it goes on, and one must address the way in which the organization of the election favored the ruling party and restricted the rights of the opposition. Yeah, that's
Yep,
usually the
yep.
way. Yeah. And then it says, what do you think will happen next in Moldova? The fundamental situation of the country will certainly not improve by further driving division and defaming half the country. Well, it's not going to improve, but that's the plan. Um, Moldova is only so interesting to the EU because of its important role in the current geopolitical situation. I'm deeply concerned that the next step will involve sacrificing Moldova's currently enshrined neutrality in favor of a NATO
Well,
perspective.
this whistleblower must have been watching us because
I think so. I think
that's exactly what George said.
that's right. Exactly. They're going to move. They're going to move to change that constitution. And they're going to do it by saying, well, if we don't, then we're going to fall under Russia's sway. Um, and then it says but if the future really comes to a question of Moldova's NATO membership or de facto membership, then we have a highly dangerous situation that bodes ill given the developments in Ukraine. Yeah, I think that's I
Again,
think where it's heading.
you have to come, you don't have to go far. You just come here. That's what
Exactly.
we've said.
Exactly. So, none of this is new to us or to gagglers, but I thought we'd just go through it because it's just confirmation from somebody who was on the ground and just said, yeah, this election was a joke.
Yeah, but what I would hope to see is that the Moldovan opposition studies carefully what the Georgians are doing.
Right.
Okay. All right. You don't need outsiders. You need self-reliance and
Right.
steadfastness. That's what's going to do this. Okay. Um, uh, yeah. I mean, the Ukraine. Yeah. That, that
That's right.
that's is that the future these people that one want for that country?
Right.
Well, they're making it happen.
That's right. That's right. And that is the plan because I think we're in agreement. I think that's what they'll do in Moldova. That's the plan for Georgia. It's just that it failed. I mean, Saakashvili was such a
Oh, well,
disaster.
I saw it this morning. I mean, what is it like? The way it was described, there's been four coup attempts in the last 2 years or something.
Yeah, that's what the Georgian prime minister said. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is the fourth time they,
in a
they
number of
they've
years.
attempted the color revolution here, and clearly, I mean, this is the plan. I mean and they're going to do it again. I mean, no question. They're going to keep doing it, and keep delegitimizing the government. You just keep repeating, "Oh, this government has no legitimacy; has stolen the election." This is what they do. I think they're doing this in Hungary. I think they're making the preparation now to get Orban out in Hungary. Orban is very sophisticated. I mean, he knows exactly whom he's dealing with, but it's just it's
Well,
manifest here in
yeah, but
Hungary the extent to which they want to get him out.
see, I have a slight advantage over everyone because my experience in Ukraine, my experience in Georgia, even here in Moscow, talking to these liberals, the conversation lasts at best 90 seconds because they have no arguments.
No, no.
They just have this messianic
Yep.
hatred,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And but that you
No.
can't communicate with these people.
Right.
It's impossible
Yep.
because they facts are alien to them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I mean, I find this here in Hungary. You come across all the time. They hate Orban, and then when you try to ask them, okay, what is it you hate about it? What? And it's amazing they're not really able ever to present a coherent argument. I mean, where you hate him so intensely, what is it? What is it that you hate? And that's the thing. Different way. I think when I remember an interview with Robert De Niro, he was asked,
Mhm.
that you really hate Trump. Yeah, 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 I absolutely hate him. Yeah, okay. What is it you hate about him? And he's completely stumped. I mean, it's like, well, you said you really loathe him. What is it you really hate about him? And I think that's the thing about this is we're not talking about
And then he
ranking.
just gets angry.
He gets angry, but
That's it. That's it. That's
but
always the react. They just get angry then.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so and this is the way they operate. That this is it's at the level. It's visceral and it's irrational. But nonetheless, it is effective. I mean, you
Yeah,
got
but
people,
it's interesting.
you wind them up, and
Go back to Emmanuel Todd's work recently. He's updated it actually. You can go to the Moon of Alabama, and he has fragments of it. Is it the problem these people have is that they cannot accept reality.
right,
They fight reality
right,
because for them everything is some kind of metaphysical thing.
yep,
Which when it comes to like poetry or even religious belief, there's room for that. But I
right,
mean. This is a different realm, but
Right.
the reality is a big problem for them.
Right. Right. Yeah. No.
It's like Smotrich saying, with the flotilla, we captured all of these people from the flotilla, and we're going to send them to Gaza. Well, yeah, that's where they wanted to go. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just bizarre.
Right. 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 Yeah. No. No, exactly. Um, and that's why they've reached the point when they can't win any election. I mean, it's no longer possible for them to win election. They just have to steal these elections, just outright steal them. And it's like, you just look at France, for instance. France was, I think this is what seventh, this is the seventh prime minister of Macron's, who has resigned. It's good, and you think, well, you've got a problem on your hands here, and you're preoccupying yourself with Ukraine. I mean, you can't form a government. You can't pass a budget. You're preoccupied with Ukraine, and this is what's happened with
But
Europe's.
that's why he's preoccupied with you.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Germany,
Because
Germany.
it's the whole neoliberal project for Europe is short-circuiting right before our
Right,
eyes. Okay. And then when elections come around, they deny reality that people don't like you and your ideas.
right, exactly, exactly. Um, I mean, look, we're in Germany, where the deindustrialization is really, seems to be going along at a very nice clip. No one seems to have any ability to address that issue, and yet, what's Schmerz talking about? Instead of, hey, how do we get ourselves to be an industrial superpower again? Is preoccupied with Ukraine. So you can say this is where Europe is going, and that's why the reputation of Europe is just so low in the world. I mean, it really is just in the toilet as far as the world is concerned. I mean, there was a time people condemned Europe, oh, colonialism and whatever, but nobody does that anymore. Now people just despise Europe. They don't even bring up the bad old days of the 19th century. Say, I mean, you're a joke. I mean, you're deindustrializing, and you don't seem to have any ability to deal with that.
And obviously there are ample reasons for criticizing the colonial powers. We're not going to adjudicate that here, okay? But one thing that the Europeans had going for them is the basic principles of the Enlightenment, okay?
Right,
Even if they didn't practice it in a pristine
right,
way, okay? Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly,
right,
these things here,
right,
which the world accepts
right,
in their particular circumstances.
right.
But what's worse now is that, well, have you been to a French airport recently?
Yeah,
Oh, the one in the new ones in India and Dubai and China and Thailand, they're a lot better.
yeah,
A lot better.
yeah.
Okay?
Mm.
They don't
But
smell. Okay?
yeah,
Y-
yeah, yeah,
y- Have you gone to a bancomat in Paris? Don't. You'll be robbed. I was last time I was there. I was going for. Don't you crazy? You got to go inside somewhere where there are cameras because you'll get mugged.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
No, my point, what I'm trying to bring up here is that you're writing on a reputation that doesn't exist in reality anymore.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no.
This Palestine Action Group, it's a terrorist organization in England? Are you me?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Really? That this is insane.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. And the this perpetual cracking down on free speech, which is just prevails in the UK and throughout Europe. I mean, this is becoming legion. I mean, you see it on YouTube, you see it on Twitter all the time. Some ordinary person is suddenly arrested in his home, hauled off by the police. They hold him off. What has he done? oh, something, he posted something on Facebook that somebody else found offensive, and you're getting arrested. The police come and knock on your door and they
I
arrest you.
think you saw it, George, too. An elderly person, I mean,
Yeah,
a very elderly person in a wheelchair protesting in the UK, and they pick up like seven guys pick up a. Well, is that what your job is?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
To haul off
yeah,
pensioners in a wheelchair
yeah,
holding a banner?
yeah,
Is that what your purpose is? Is that public order?
yeah.
That's
That's right.
public disorder.
That's right.
Okay.
And then when, if you recall, when Keir Starmer was asked, and he's been asked several times about the state of free speech, he always gives that same response. He's very repetitious. So we've had free speech in the United Kingdom for many centuries. We are very proud of it. We guard it very jealously, and we are going to maintain our free speech for centuries to come. Now, you can keep repeating this mantra, but everyone knows it's nothing. It's absolute rubbish. Just because you had something 100 years ago doesn't mean you have it now, or it doesn't mean that you're going to have it in 100 years' time. You got to keep. You have to work at it. You have to keep preserving it. You can't just dine out on your reputation.
And that guy's reputation is odious.
Exactly.
About look, put in Stammer and Julian Assange. Just search it. Search it.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Free speech, my foot.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Anyway, George and I felt compelled to do this because we weren't talking out of our sleeves.
Yep.
Everything we
Exactly.
said, and more, has been at least there's a
Exactly.
testimony to it.
Exactly. It was
Okay.
there on that day, election observer. Exactly. There it is. It's on the record. The fact that it's not picked up by the mainstream just speaks for itself. You have to go to an obscure German publication in order to find out exactly, what an election observer actually witnessed. So,
It's the EU trying to bring its democratic values to countries like Moldova and Georgia. But what we are seeing in front of our eyes is the Moldovanization of European politics.
yeah,
That's what's happening.
that's
It's the
exactly right.
reverse. And
That's
that's one of the interesting trends of the last couple decades is that all of these colored revolution attempts, starting with the former Yugoslavia, that was the original iteration
exactly
of this.
the.
And what they've done is they've applied it in many places around the world. What happened in Nepal? That's not my area, but it seems kind of suspicious to
Right.
me. But what's worse is that this model, it was played out in 2014 in Ukraine and disastrous results. But now it's the same model being applied to Western
Yep.
countries.
Exactly.
Okay? And
Exactly.
I and I said and I said this in 2016 is that we're going to see attempts to regime change against Donald Trump.
Yep.
And
We exactly have that.
and essentially, they didn't succeed at first.
Right.
Okay, but
Right.
that's what it was. It was
No,
a
that's right.
colored revolution against the duly love
Right.
them or hate them. Okay, it's
Right.
immaterial here.
Yeah.
But an elected president of the United States, they tried to color revolutionize
Yeah.
him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And remember with 2014, but before that, of course, we had the Orange Revolution in 2004, where again Yanukovych won that election, and then it was stolen. With the Western intervention, the West moved in and then stole the election outright. You,
And then he was elected.
And then he was
The
elected, and then
same
they stole
guy.
it again from him the second time they removed him. So yeah, that's really the warning that these people just don't give up. They're going to keep coming and coming and coming, and then because they don't accept defeat. They didn't accept the 2010 election when Yanukovych won, so they worked and worked and worked on how to get him out. So
Okay,
this is
so the upcoming parliamentary election in Germany. Let's bookmark this, everyone. So, given that observers' a testimony, the arrests that were made prior to the election, the weekend before, was the equivalent of 4,000 Germans
Yep.
if you compare the
Yep. No,
population.
no,
Well,
exactly.
that's what you should expect.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's going to be an awful lot of that. And ultimately, if it looks like the AFD is going to win, and is going to or come in, the leading party, they're just going to outlaw it because the program they had before, which is, well, we're just going to keep it out of power. We're going to have this wall, the iron wall.
It's the Sweden model, okay, where
Exactly,
the
but it's
largest party is kept out of
exactly,
power, and they
but it's going to
replicate
be
it all
hard.
through Europe.
But it's harder and harder when you get this is the leading party. The party gets the most votes. It becomes very hard. So you just outlaw it. That's it. Boom, that's it. Well, otherwise it's like allowing Hitler to become chancellor. So what else can we do?
We don't do something, it's 1933. If we do
Exactly.
something, it's
Yeah,
all reductionist thinking,
that's right.
okay?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you're
Okay.
right. It's the Moldovization or Ukrainianization of European politics, and I think that's where we've got to. You can't because you can't allow the people to vote. You can't allow them to have a say in how they run their government. I mean, it's Ursula von der Leyen. She gets to decide what happens. A completely unelected bureaucrat.
And keep in mind, everyone, before this lady came, how many people took the European Commissioner president very seriously?
Nobody.
No, he
No.
would chime in every once in a while on something.
Right.
A lot of it had to do with foreign policy, but it was like the Green New
Yeah.
Deal
Right. Right.
or global conventions on immigration.
Right.
That's how I remember that.
Yeah.
This person has just usurped power.
Yeah.
In the most grotesque way. I
Yeah.
mean, this woman is doing more damage to European politics and
Yeah.
democracy than anyone before her.
That's right. Completely undemocratic. And she always attends all these meetings. She's always there. G7, NATO, UN General Assembly. She's always there as if she represents anything other than she's just a glorified bureaucrat. That's all she is. And you're right. I mean, if you remember the EU Commission president, remember that drunken guy, Juncker?
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
was, I mean, he was just entertaining because you always were wondering how hammered is he going to be at the next meeting, and usually he's going to be really hammered to the point when they have to just sort of carry him to the car and just push.
Poroshenko had to do that. Poroshenko's a pretty big guy, and he actually ended up taking him. Okay, and he had the biggest smile on his face. They think we drink a lot. Okay. But apparently, again, this person is so unmemorable that we don't remember his name. But he apparently, George, he had back problems.
That's
I remember Merkel like, oh my God, he was German, wasn't he?
Jean-Claude Juncker. I'm
Yeah.
not sure whether he was. I mean, I thought maybe he was from Luxembourg. Um,
Oh, you're probably right. You're probably
yeah.
right.
Yeah, yeah, but he was always, he was hammered. And you remember that time when he kind of slapped Orban's face? I think he was trying to be playful, oh, he says, "Here comes the dictator," and I think maybe he was trying to be playful, but he kind of slapped his face, and it looked rather bad. I mean, you're slapping, a prime minister's face, but I think he was just so drunk that he didn't even realize what he was doing. So it was always just one embarrassment after another. But I guess people didn't care. Well, he's just a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No power. I mean, he's a figurehead.
right.
It's aspirational to have some kind of one person representing
Right.
Europe, and he didn't, and nobody really cared. And he was just, like George said, we just waited to see him next to see what he would do next. Okay, but this lady is complete. Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, that's what she
Yeah.
is. Okay, she has two non-confidence votes coming up in the
Yep.
European Parliament, but that Parliament is a
It
joke.
is a
Okay.
joke. Yeah.
It's a,
Yeah.
they can't even propose legislation.
That's right.
They're only there to ratify what Brussels said.
Exactly.
What kind of they're trying to spread democracy? What kind of democracy is that?
That's right.
None.
Yeah. They have none.
And then they go after Le Pen like some money went missing. Oh yeah, right. In the European Parliament, some money went missing.
Yes.
Okay. All right, right, right. I mean, what is this stand up?
Yes.
This is
Uh,
stand up stuff.
yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, the whole thing is a grift. It doesn't
Yeah.
do anything.
Exactly. Exactly.
What?
Exactly.
What? I mean, you had conservative when the UK was still in
Mm.
in the EU. So when you're out of power, you could hate Brussels and the European experiment takes too much power away from the member state. Then these same people would get themselves voted in the
Correct.
same parliament that they thought should be disbanded. Why? Because they were getting a nice thick paycheck.
Yes, very nice because if you are there, you get a nice, very nice paycheck. You get paid very well. They give you lavish office space, and you have very good meals. So you have no power, obviously, but it's a pleasant life. I mean, Farage was a member of the European
Yes.
Parliament, so I think he had a very good time during the years he was in Strasbourg. So yeah, but it's a meaningless entity, and then you have the crowning achievement is when you have Ursula von der Leyen delivers the State of the Union. So you got a completely unelected
Oh man.
figurehead. She delivers a State of the Union, and
Can
then
you
you have a
imagine?
parliament that are voted in by people. People don't even vote in these European
I
elections.
would doubt even if all of them ever go.
No, I don't think. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
can you imagine the wine cellar for that place? Ooh. Oh, no wonder they like going there. It's just probably endless booze.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Which, of course, they're there just to raise their hand and
Yep.
say, we agree with Queen Ursula.
That's right. That's
You
right.
agree or disagree with her. There's no debate.
No, right,
And then when there is a debate, it's very rare and sometimes it's quite fiery. Okay.
right.
But you can say anything you want because it has
No
no
power, no power at
consequences.
all. Because there was always those two. They've been voted
The
out.
Irish, yeah,
The
yeah,
two
yeah.
Irish. I've forgotten their names, but it's always the same. Those two Irish MEPs, and they were deliver good speeches, but it didn't matter. It
No.
absolutely mattered not in the slightest. And so it was like, okay, very nice. And then everyone goes in their own way. And then they have occasionally these symbolic votes on. You remember when they had the vote in 2019, something like Russia. So Russia was as responsible for the
Yeah,
outbreak.
the Second World War is
Yeah.
Nazi Germany. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So they have this symbolic vote. It means nothing, but just simply, it gets pushed by Poland and the Baltic states, and they have a vote on it, and manage to get everything wrong and be as offensive as possible.
And they don't miss happy hour in the process.
No, 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 no,
All
no,
right, everyone.
no
I
one
mean,
misses that.
it was. I think it's fair to say that we are prescient about Moldova because, in and itself, it's a small little country. It's an important geopolitical jigsaw piece, as we said from the beginning, and it's the future of European democracy
Exactly.
because the people in power are loathed, loathed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
And
Lo-
if this Danish politician just read this today, she wants to ban social media to young to 18-year-olds and younger
yeah.
because they learn too much.
That's right. That's right. And they don't. They suddenly aren't in agreement with me. I mean that they have to be punished. People have to be punished if they're not in agreement with me. That's the way. If people vote the wrong way, they have to be punished. And so yeah, we're going to take away your social media. Because you might call into question that we're under attack from Russia. I mean, we can't have that. If
Fantastic.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right, this is Wednesday. That means George and I will reconvene on Friday. Obviously, George has this desire to have these huge blowouts on Sunday, which is okay, but then pencil in 10 o'clock Eastern Time Monday for our live stream.
exactly, exactly. And then we've got to remember the the body problem, which is growing in magnitude,
Yes.
because
I'm
body.
facing a Chihuahua
Exactly,
insurrection.
there's a rebellion, and a rebellion by buddy is no laughing matter. This is serious stuff. So, in order to quell this uprising, we have to uh, provide something to keep him happy. Otherwise, there'll be a seizure of power, and then Buddy's going to be in control of everything. That's the last thing we want.
And that doesn't bode well for the dachshunds.
No,
Keep that.
exactly, exactly. That's that, absolutely. So if you have any cash lying around, or even if in your bank account, just take it straight out of the bank account and put it in the tip jar, or whatever it is, just draw it out, put it in. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and we're going to make sure that Buddy doesn't take over everything, because I think a Buddy dictatorship will not be a pretty sight.
No.
So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.